الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن يعظم شعائر الله فإنها من تقوى القلوب وقال تعالى قل يا أيها الكافرون إلى قوله لكم دينكم ولي دين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد أما بعد. My dear respected brothers, sisters and elders, this country we're living in, it's a great country. And the reason for that greatness, or one of the reasons for that greatness, is the rights that we're afforded living in this country. And among those rights is the right to practice whatever religion we choose. You have a right to practice whatever religion you choose, or you have a right to not practice any religion at all. And the most important document in U.S. history, or one of the most important documents, the Bill of Rights, the amendments, the first sentence in the First Amendment, it says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. How the courts have interpreted this sentence, it means there's a separation between church and state. The government will not interfere in our religious affairs. And the other way around, religion will not interfere in politics, in government. That's how this statement has been interpreted. And so living in this country, we have a choice. We can follow whatever religion we choose. And we have chosen to follow the religion of Islam. And we thank Allah for this opportunity, that He had allowed us to practice this religion, that He has chosen us to be Muslims. But because there is free reign, because there is no restriction on religion, that means that because Islam has no restrictions, other religions have no restriction as well. That means people who are not Muslim, they are free to practice whatever religion they choose as well. And because of that, there is a probability or a possibility of influence from non-Muslim cultures coming into Islamic cultures. And so as Muslims, we have to preserve our identity. We have to preserve our Islamic heritage. And Islam, it's a very, very comprehensive religion. It's something that, it's not, very broad. Even the little things it tells us how to do. And Islam, the word Islam in Arabic, Aslama yuslimu Islam, from Babi Af'al, it means to submit yourself. Complete submission. And it teaches us even the small things. There's a hadith in Muslim, Salman Farsi raziyallahu an, he says, قال لنا المشركون إني أرى صاحبكم يعلمكم حتى يعلمكم حتى يعلمكم القراءة. Your guy, your prophet, he teaches you. They said, your prophet, he teaches you everything. He teaches you how to do everything. Even he teaches you how to use the bathroom. And if someone like me, someone said that to me, I might have cowered, or I might have gone under pressure, or I might have, deflected the question. But what did he respond? He said, Ajal, of course. Of course he taught us everything. إِنَّهُ نَهَانَا أَن يَسْتَنْجِيَ أَحَدُنَا بِيَمِينِهِ أَوْ يَسْتَقْبِلَ الْقِبْلَةِ. About using the bathroom, he told us we shouldn't cleanse ourselves with our right hands. He said we shouldn't face the qibla while relieving ourselves. He had this attitude that Islam is teaching us even the little things, and he was thankful for that. He was grateful for that. Because if Islam teaches us the little things, it's easier for us to preserve our Muslim identity. It's easier for us to identify as Muslims. And the ayah mentioned in the Quran, وَمَن يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. Whoever respects or reveres the sha'air of Islam, فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ, that is a result of the sincerity of that person's heart. Sha'air of Islam. Sha'air, there are multiple interpretations of this word. In Ibn Kathir, he mentions the qawl of Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma. He says the best sha'ira is Baytullah, the Kaaba. But Imam Baghawi, he makes it more broad. He says sha'air Allah ay a'la madinihi. Sha'air means anything symbolic of Islam. That is a sha'ira. Anything that's symbolic of Islam, that's a sha'ira. And so Muslim centers, mosques, Muslim congregations, all of these things become sha'aid. These things become symbols of Islam. And because there were many things at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were many things that are present today that were not present at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's difficult to get lost in them. It's difficult to maintain your Islamic identity. But to deal with that, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he introduced us to two concepts. Two concepts that if we hold on to these, if we avoid these two things, it will be easier for us to preserve our identity. The first, tashabbuh, and the second, bid'ah. Tashabbuh means imitation, and bid'ah means some sort of innovation. About bid'ah, there's a hadith in Nisa'i, Prophet Muhammad said, وَشَرُّ الْأُمُورِ مُحْدَثَاتُهَا وَكُلُّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ وَكُلُّ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. He said any innovation, any new thing that's created in deen, it is a bid'ah. And every bid'ah is dalalah, it leads to misguidance. And every misguidance will lead to the hellfire. And then about tashabbuh, about imitation, hadith of Abu Dawood, Prophet Muhammad said, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." Whoever imitates a group of people, he will be with them on the Day of Judgment. He will be amongst them on the Day of Judgment. To further define these, to elucidate these even further, for bid'ah, Imam Shatibi, he has written a book called Al-I'tisam. And Al-I'tisam, it's a phenomenal book, and in it he has discussed only the topic of bid'ah, only the topic of innovation. What is the definition of bid'ah? Why is it bad? And in what situations is it allowed? And so he said, for bid'ah, al-amalu alladhi la dalila alayhi fi ash-shar'i. That action which has no proof or no precedent in Islam. There's no precedent for that action in Islam. That's considered bid'ah. And what does that mean? It means that if there is something that we do today that was not done in the time of the Prophet, but something similar was done, then that is not a bid'ah. For example, we all drive to the masjid. No one drove in that time. There were no cars. But because driving to the masjid is similar to walking to the masjid, they say this is not a bid'ah, which is quite obvious. And then for tashabbuh, to define it even further, tashabbuh, we are not allowed to imitate only the sha'air of other religions, only the symbolic things of other religions, only their worship. That is the thing that we are prevented from doing. Mullah Ali Qari, in his commentary on Mishkat, Mirqat al-Mafatih, he writes, "Ash-sha'airu huwa al-muradu bit-tashabbuh la ghayr." The thing that we are not allowed to imitate, it is sha'air, not anything else. And Ibn Taymiyyah, rahmatullah alayh, in Iqtida al-Sirat al-Mustaqim, he's written something similar for Muslims living in non-Muslim countries. And so these are the two things that, two concepts Prophet Muhammad has given us, that if we avoid these two things, it will be easier for us to maintain our Islamic identity. It will be easier for us to remain Muslims. And keeping these two things, in mind, we're in the holiday season. And are we allowed to celebrate these holidays or not? Or are we allowed to participate in these holidays or not? And American holidays are of two types. You have a religious holiday and you have a non-religious holiday. Non-religious holidays like Veterans Day, for example. There's nothing wrong with participating or celebrating in those as long as you're not doing anything contrary to Islam. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to religious holidays, like Christmas, for example, are we allowed to participate in Christmas? Are we allowed to say Merry Christmas? Stuff like that. There's a difference of opinion. There are some scholars that say that because the origin of these holidays is religious, the origin of these holidays is rooted in Christian history, that's why we're not allowed to participate in any of these things, in saying Merry Christmas or in any of that stuff. But on the other side, you have scholars that say because the religious aspect of these holidays is no longer present, it's fine to say Merry Christmas. It's fine to go to a Christmas party or something like that. However, and they say this only because Christmas is no longer a sha'ira. It is no longer a symbol of Christianity. It has become a national symbol. And because of that dynamic aspect, they say participating in these things is fine. However, those things which are still a symbol of Christianity or are still a symbol of another religion, those things will always be haram. For example, going to church for the purpose of worship, that will never be halal. It's jais to go to observe, it's permissible to go to observe, but for going for the purpose of worship, that will never be halal. And that's why Surah Kafirun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is saying, telling the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, say to the non-Muslims, لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ, I will not worship what you worship, and you don't worship what I worship, the whole surah. And then at the end He says, لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينُ, for you is your religion, and for me is mine. You practice your own religion, I practice my own religion, and that's it. We can live peacefully. I don't have to practice your religion. And so He says, lakum dinukum, your deen, your religion, those symbols that are religious, those are the things that we are prohibited from. So there's scholars on both sides. And when you have scholars on both sides, you have leniency in the fatwa. You have leniency in the verdict. And that's why there's a famous Arabic proverb, اختلاف العلماء رحمة. When scholars of deen, when they have ikhtilaf, when they disagree on something, that's a means of rahmah. Because that means you can't judge someone else. You can't tell another person, why are you saying this, why are you saying that? Because they are scholars on that side as well. And it's not, appropriate for someone like me or someone who hasn't studied the deen in detail to go and argue with these scholars without any real evidence. And so because you have scholars on both sides, there's leniency in the fatwa. And so we make dua to Allah that Allah enables us and to avoid these two things, to avoid bid'ah and to avoid tashabbuh. And Allah enables us to preserve our Muslim identity. Wa akhir da'wan, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadi alladhina istafa amma ba'd. My dear respected brothers, sisters, and elders, there are very few non-Muslims who will go and study Islam in depth. The majority of them, they will interpret Islam through us. They will see us Muslims and they will say, okay, this is how Islam is supposed to be. And so if we are ideal Muslims and we maintain our Islamic identity, then we will be spreading Islam far more effectively than those people who we will be spreading it far more effectively than them going and studying about Islam. We will be far more effective. And the general attitude in the West is that they're very accepting and they're very understanding. It might not have been like that a decade ago, but now it is like that. And as Muslims, we should excel at whatever we do. Because if we excel at whatever we're doing, that will look good on Islam. And we should contribute something to society. It should not be such that I will make enough money to buy a nice house, a nice car, and that's it. No, we should do something to benefit the greater good, to benefit society at large. Everyone knows the history of algebra. Everyone knows that it was Muslims at the time of Ma'mun Rashid that algebra came into existence, or the foundations of algebra came into existence. And now it's used in pretty much every field today. And aside from that, these numbers that we use, 1, 2, 3, we write them 1, 2, 3. These are called Arabic numerals. As compared to Roman numerals. Roman numerals would write I. And so those are Roman numerals. The shift that came in the West from Roman numerals to Arabic numerals, that was caused by a guy named Fibonacci. The Fibonacci theorem, the Fibonacci sequence, the same guy. And he wrote a book trying to convince the West that here's a set of problems, try solving them using the Roman numeral system, and now try solving them using the Arabic numeral system. And he said, look how easy it is using the Arabic numeral system. And so he is credited with making the West adopt the Arabic numeral system. And in the book that he wrote, Liber Abaci, it was in Latin, it's translated into English. The book he wrote, it was a number of problems, right? 22 of the problems in that book, it was taken from Muhammad bin Musa al-Khawarizmi. Muhammad bin Musa al-Khwarizmi, he is the guy who is the founder of algebra, the father of algebra. And 53 of those problems were taken from Abu Kamil's book. Abu Kamil, he wrote a shara, a commentary on Khwarizmi's book, on his book on algebra. And so people will accept, he accepted that because it was something that would benefit the greater society. He accepted it because he thought this way was better and that everyone in the world will benefit from using this system. Similarly, we have, there's very few countries in the world now that don't perform yoga, that don't use yoga for exercise. Why is that? People like the way Gandhi preached, they liked his non-violent protest, they liked the way he conducted himself, and because of that, yoga became so common. And even though yoga was a form of worship for Hindus, and it may still be, I don't know, but because of the effect that Gandhi had on people, because the effect his practices had on people, people liked this practice. People liked the way he worshipped. And if Muslims were to do something like that, Muslims were to contribute something to the greater good of society, it's very possible people will start praying 5 times a day. And on a larger scale, there are people who I've met who are Hindu, but they grew up in India, and they say our mother used to send us to the masjid every day. They were Hindu, they were not Muslim. They said our mother used to send us to the masjid every day, and I pray 5 times a day. Because they liked the way those Muslims conducted themselves. Because they liked that, they were impressed by it, and they wanted to imitate those people. And the final point, Dr. Martin Luther King. Whenever people liked the way he had his nonviolent protest, people liked the way he conducted himself. And whenever people remember him, what do they say? The great Reverend King said this, the great Reverend King said that. No one will ever say the great Imam said this, the great Sheikh said this, the great Maulana said this, the great Mufti said this. Because we are limited. We limit ourselves either to only we're going to make enough money for our family and that's it, or we're going to donate a little bit to the masjid and that's it. But we're not in academic circles. We're not doing something for the greater good of society, something that people will remember Islam for. They will say, look at that Muslim, he made this advancement in technology, he made this advancement in science, or whatever it may be. And so until we have people that are working for the greater good of society, Islam will never rise up. The name of Islam will never rise up. And it is our job to make the image of Islam better. It is our job to make Islam, to make people think good about Islam. And we can only do that through our actions. And so we make dua to Allah that Allah enables us to do this, and that we become true Muslims and proper Muslims, and that when people look at us, they will want to accept Islam. عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى وأجل وأتم وأكبر أقيموا الصلاة